Today on the Big 3 in 30, the Hornets blow out the Celtics.
118-89.
Boom.
On the road,
Yes.
on the second night of a back-to-back.
The Thunder beat the Knicks in the Garden.
We started out great defensively and stayed that way all the way through for Oklahoma City.
And the Hawks win their 5th in a row.
A really impressive win on the road for the Hawks.
This is the Big 3 in 30 NBA. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 NBA starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Hornets picked up a blowout win over the Boston Celtics last night behind 20 points from Con Knippel. Walker Mellon, Doug Branson have the recap on Locked On Hornets.
Doug, the Hornets just beat the Celtics 118-89
Boom.
on the road,
Yes.
on the second night of a back-to-back.
Uh-huh.
After the Hornets had mechanical issues with their plane last night, so they don't even get into Boston until 4 a.m. What do they do?
Mayday.
What do they do if they actually get a good night's rest? Do they win by 60? Anyways, all right. The Hornets, they beat the Celtics 118-89. It's the Celtics' largest loss of the season, losing by 29. Boston never led in this game. It marks Boston's second wire-to-wire loss of the season. It's the first since November 1st, okay, all the way back November 1st against the Rockets. It's the Celtics' third 20-point loss of the season. So the Hornets just beat the second-best team in the Eastern Conference, a squad already having tallied 40 wins on the year. So what does it mean for Charlotte? They've won 6 straight. They've won 10 straight road games. The NBA record is 16, if memory serves correct, with Eric Collins having mentioned that on the previous broadcast when the Hornets won the first night of a back-to-back, beating Dallas by 27. All right, they beat the Celtics by more than they beat the Dallas Mavericks. Now the Hornets, again, having won 6 straight games. They won each of those games by 15-plus points. It's the longest streak by any team since the 2017-2018 Warriors. Hey, they were pretty good. It's tied for the second longest streak in NBA history. LaMelo Ball is a maestro. Brandon Miller takes his turn, running bleep. Con Knippel, he got back on track tonight, had 20 points going into the fourth quarter. Hornets have a non-Melo ball handler, so now you don't have to rely on LaMelo being on the court for this offense not to go into complete shambles. LaMelo still the maestro of all maestros, and now the Hornets can tread water, and even more so, even go a little freestyle swimming in that water with Kobe White handling the basketball. I'll ask you the question. Are the Hornets just going to win the championship, Doug Branson? Is that what we're watching this year in 2025, 2026? Are we watching a championship contender?
I already came into this game saying that there wasn't any need at this point in time to put a ceiling on what the Charlotte Hornets could accomplish. We spent all preseason doing that, like saying, well, you know, with this and that, maybe this could happen and that. All bets are off at this point. I think with the way they came into this game, the Hornets and the Celtics 1-2 in net rating starting in January 1 for the calendar year. These were the top 2 teams in net rating. And what you just saw was a massive win by the Charlotte Hornets, decimating their opponent. And I'll just read you, I haven't finished my game notes yet for every Hornets box score because I just had to run upstairs as fast as I could and get here on the live to say "Top-ho" to the live listeners as loud as I can without waking up the baby. Thank you so much to everybody. I mean, look, there's so many chats right now. I'm just going to have to randomly fire a few as we go through the show. But I haven't finished my game notes yet, but I just want to read to you what the first sentence I have down in my top of the line recap. The Charlotte Hornets reached their full form Wednesday night in Boston. They understood the assignment. They took this game as seriously as you could possibly take it from tip-off to Final Horn. They began the game with purpose, and that purpose was to destroy, was to annihilate, was to send a message to the rest of the NBA. And that message is the Hornets are here, they're here to stay, and there's not a single thing you can do about it.
So the Hornets now they've beaten a lot of contenders for the NBA championship. We can go back all the way to January 5th, the turn of the new year, when they beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 124-97. And that was the, hey, everybody, it's time to wake up moment. Just pay attention. Just don't sleep on the Hornets. Okay? You might think that this was an outlier, but everybody started talking about them a lot more from a national perspective after they beat the Thunder by almost 30 points. Then they'd have a couple of monstrous wins. They beat the Jazz by like 50. All right. Whatever. They beat the Lakers by almost 20. Okay, Lakers, not all that crazy impressive, but fine, whatever. Then the next big win that they had, the next big one was against San Antonio on national television via Amazon with Eric and Dell still on the call. But they came back, and they actually showed a clip of Hornets Real Access in the pregame show with Shannon and Dell. And that clip on Hornets Real Access that they showed goes all the way back to that game against San Antonio, and it gives us a peek into the locker room when Charles Lee is challenging his team. Hey, last time we played on national television, I think we allowed the distractions to seep in, and we ended up losing that game. Here, against the Spurs, we need to keep our focus, and it's exactly what they did, and they beat San Antonio at home 111-106. Now here they are, having beaten the Boston Celtics 118-89. The Spurs game, it wasn't a trouncing of them, but it was still a pretty comfortable victory over the Spurs. They went into the locker room, I think, up 17 against San Antonio. So, Doug, you look at also the other fact that when you look at the NBA standings in the Western Conference, there was one point when they had beaten the top 4 seeds. Denver, okay, you can throw that out because they didn't have Jokic. Fine, whatever. They beat OKC. They beat San Antonio. They beat Houston. They only beat them by 10. They allowed the Rockets back to make that a little bit closer than what it really was in the fourth quarter. They beat the Lakers, and so now that's 5 of the top 6. The only team they didn't beat was Minnesota. There's just nothing else that you can say to convince people this team isn't real if they don't believe it right now. Last thing, though, I don't think we have that problem anymore. I don't think that there's any convincing that we need to do. I think people understand the Charlotte Hornets are very real, and I want no part of them if that is a team that we could potentially play in the first-round playoff series.
Got a great live comment here on YouTube. If you're listening to this the morning after, check out our YouTube page if you haven't already, youtube.com/@LockedOnHornets. We have a lot of fun. This is a comment from Nady2468 who said, my favorite thing from the Hornets this year is when Charles Lee went in the locker room and said having fun is going and kicking the other team's bleep. And man, that's all we've done. We're having fun now. Are we having fun yet? We absolutely are. And with all due respect to all of those amazing games that you just mentioned and the results and the whoopings that the Hornets have put on those other teams, honestly, to me, those other games are rendered meaningless in the face of what they've just done to the Boston Celtics. This wasn't belt to ass, folks. This was Celt to ass. They threw him in the harbor. I mean, this was a taking apart. You could see I saw it in the second quarter. The body language on the Boston Celtics was terrible, and the Celtics had come into this game on a really good streak themselves. I mean, I think they had won like 7 of their last 10. It wasn't like the Celtics came into this game limping. In fact, the Hornets limped into Boston at 4 o'clock in the morning because their plane had troubles on the second night of a back-to-back. And then they said, doesn't matter because our grasshopper in Charles Lee is going to bite the head off of your sensei in Joe Mazzulla, who needed a hug. He needed another 17 timeouts. He needed something. Maybe he needs Jason Tatum. I don't know, but they couldn't handle the Charlotte Hornets on a Wednesday night in March.
Jaylen Brown was frustrated, got the technical foul, and you're right, it was the Hornets limping. Their plane was limping heading into Boston, and they get in at 4 a.m. on the second night of a back-to-back, and even still, they come away with a victory.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but you could also go to the NBA Finals along with it. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NBA. The Thunder went into New York and picked up a 3-point win over the Knicks. Rylan Stiles goes over the victory on Locked On Thunder.
Let's start with who was out and eventually would be out, because I think that it matters a lot in this game. The Thunder did not have J-Dub. They did not have AJ Mitchell, although, the Hoop Collective talked about that injury. You can go hear what Tim McMahon had to say about it with AJ Mitchell. Those guys hopefully back sooner than later for OKC. But in this game, Ihart left with left calf tightness, and Caruso left with a hip contusion this game early. The Knicks did not have Mitchell Robinson. So I think that it did change this game, and we'll get into how it did. But this game started out great defensively and stayed that way all the way through for Oklahoma City. The Knicks were 4 of 15 shooting early in this game, and that helped the Thunder spark transition chances, and they had the threes falling from Chet Holmgren and from Chet Holmgren alone, because in that sequence, the Thunder were 0 for 8 at the final buzzer from 3 in the first quarter, and Chet went 4 for 6 in that frame to keep them afloat. Now the Knicks, they closed these quarters really well. They had a really strong close to the first quarter, really strong close to the second quarter, and absolutely dominated the last 8 minutes of the third quarter. But their defense really impressed tonight from New York. I thought that this was something that we talked about earlier in the preview edition of the Knicks Thunder Locked On Thunder crossover, where Gavin was telling us how the Knicks defense has really been better lately. And tonight it showed out. I mean, this was a very physical game on both sides. Both sides had a ton of energy in this game. And I have a massive amount of respect for the possessions that the Knicks put together, just suffocating SGA, suffocating this Thunder offense. I do wonder how that changes when the Thunder have other creators like J-Dub and AJ back, but you got to give credit to the versatility, the length, the size, the physicality of New York for getting it done. This game stayed messy on offense all the way through for OKC, but the Thunder did enough, like putting together that 10-2 run to start the second quarter to keep the car on the road, as SGA said after the game, as it's a very big Thunderism after every game. The Thunder led by 10 at halftime, and exclusively due to Chet Holmgren offensively and great defense throughout, as we just talked about. And it was always a situation here for OKC where you always see somebody step up. Like at halftime, Shea had 11 points, facing very aggressive coverages. Isaiah Joe and McCain were not hitting from 3 and didn't hit all night from 3. And you're thinking, how in the world is OKC up by 10? How in the world did the Thunder win this game? It's because Chet Holmgren in that first half had 22 points. And a flurry of stops got the Thunder up by 14 in the third quarter, and the Knicks called the timeout, and that's when their run started. It was 13-4 to get the game back within 6 points midway through the third quarter, and then that run parlayed 24-9 for New York to tie the game with about 2 minutes left in the third quarter. And once again, they go on another run out of that stoppage, and they were able to take the lead in this game again at the end of the third quarter and start of the fourth quarter. It was a absolute rock fight, a playoff level game, an NBA Finals level game where the atmosphere was great, the defense was great, the compete level and physicality were all great. So I think that whenever you look at what the Thunder were able to do tonight to get this win, it only grows more impressive when you talk about even Jalen Brunson getting going in that third quarter for 11 points in that frame, and they still got the win. Bridges knocking down that 3 with 1.1 seconds left in the third to take the lead after being down by 15 points was huge, and the Thunder responded very well. After holding New York to 40 points in the first half, the Knicks scored 40 points in just the third quarter of this game. And it turned into one of my favorite kind of games, a something has to give game where the Thunder are 20-0 this season whenever they are up by 10 points at half. And the Knicks are 19-0 this season when they take a lead into the fourth quarter. Something had to give, and it was the Thunder who got their 21st win in that scenario, and Knicks their first loss in that scenario after OKC starts the fourth quarter on a 12-3 run, as they started every quarter strong, the Thunder did, but they didn't close quarters particularly well until the fourth quarter when they got the stop they needed at the buzzer, because New York once again responds, making some shots when the Thunder offense stalled. The Thunder were making missable shots. The Thunder were missing makeable shots all night tonight, and it was inconsistent all night from the Thunder offense. But OKC gets up by 8 in clutch time with under 3 to go. Cat fouls out. The Thunder once again opened the door back up by missing shots, and the Knicks got it to down 3 with just 6 seconds left. And that's where New York had 2 looks at a three-pointer to send it to overtime, but OKC wins. And so the Thunder got up by 15 points because of their defense, in spite of messy stretches. And because of their defense, they kept New York to only growing a 4-point lead in this game at any time. Throughout 6 lead changes, throughout 4 ties, New York could only get up by 4. And that's where defense wins championships. That's where defense is really this team's calling card, because it can bail them out of so many scenarios. You go up and down this list tonight. OKC shockingly had 15 turnovers, which is so against their MO of being a team that does not turn the ball over. So much so, they lost the turnover battle tonight to New York, who only had 13. The Thunder shockingly only had 20 points in the paint. New York had 46. The Thunder typically dominate that category. The Knicks had 20 second chance points to OKC's 10. The Knicks dominate fast break 14-2. And you do wonder, like we mentioned, about how the Thunder's offense could have been better with AJ and J-Dub. You wonder how much more the Knicks could have killed OKC on the glass with Mitchell Robinson if he was active in this game. And so these two sides really battled out well tonight, and it was a fun game to watch. But at the end of the day, New York had 15 more shot attempts than OKC. They won the possession battle in a big way and still got the loss. How did it happen? Because you ever dares know, we talk about the three-point shot being the great equalizer. The Thunder made 38% of their threes. They made 16 triples, 6 more than New York did, with the percentages to kind of back it up. OKC shot 45% from the floor, 38% from 3, and 84% at the charity stripe. New York shot 42%, 28%, and 72%. This game deserves a lot of flowers, because I know that in a modern NBA, we always skew negative with the coverage and the talking points and the discussions. But man, when you look at what these two teams did tonight, they dug deep to bring a finals level energy. The Garden was alive. These teams were physical. These teams didn't take a possession off defensively for 48 minutes, and they were both on the second night of a back-to-back. And I thought that was so impressive by each side. And the Thunder get this win when a lot of the stats say that they shouldn't, but the stat that mattered most tonight actually wasn't a stat. It was just the intensity of their defense. So score 1 for Nico Harrison, because yes, defense does win championships, and the Thunder got the win tonight, 103-100 in this game over New York.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but you could also go to the NBA Finals along with it. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 NBA. The Hawks got a road win over the Bucks for their 5th straight victory, and Locked On Hawks host Brad Rowland tells us what's gotten Atlanta so hot the last couple of weeks.
We'll be diving into what became a really impressive win on the road for the Hawks, 131-113 up in Milwaukee over the Bucks. This is the 5th win in a row for Atlanta, tying their longest winning streak of the entire season so far. They're now above 500 for the first time since mid-December. And beyond that obvious implication of this red-hot team right now, a big win in the standings for the Hawks, both in their own potential playoff pursuit and also to, quite frankly, keep the Bucks out of the playoffs for NBA draft reasons, given that the Hawks have a investment in Milwaukee's draft pick. So a multi-layered, almost a double win. I don't want to call it a full double win, but still close to that, and a very impressive and I would say, again, important win for the Hawks. And coming in, it was not exactly a breeze. Like in the first 4 games of this winning streak, I think it would be fair to say the Hawks were comfortably favored in all 4 games. Now, they still have to win them. Nothing's guaranteed in the NBA, but they were, quote-unquote, supposed to win those 4 games. This was their hardest game in about 2 weeks on paper, having to go on the road against not a great team, but certainly a more competent one than some. And Giannis is back. for Milwaukee. Both teams were missing a key piece or two. The Hawks were without Jonathan Kuminga in this game, hopefully for only a one-game sample size. He missed this game with a left knee inflammation after not being on the injury report on Wednesday night, and then actually on Tuesday night, I should say, and then being added as questionable midday and then being ruled out. He was with the team in Milwaukee. Same knee, by the way, that ruled him out for a little while, both before and after the trade with Golden State. So that's something to keep an eye on, but no further update. So everyone asking, I totally understand why. He did not play in this game. And the Bucks were without Kevin Porter Jr. and Taurean Prince. But regardless, relatively level playing field despite being on the road. And the Hawks were down by 16 points. I don't want to bury the lead too much, but the Hawks were down by 16 points in the first half of this game. And in the NBA, that's not a huge deficit in the first half by any means. Like, these things go quickly with the way the game is played at this point with three-pointers and tempo and all that stuff. But Atlanta had a 60-31 extended run over about a 19-minute period to go from down by 16 to being up by 13. And that was basically what flipped the game in the Hawks' favor. They led for the last 21 minutes consecutively at the end of this game, and then also ran it up to as many as 23 points before being having kind of the final margin of 18. So basically from the middle of the second quarter on, it was basically a domination for the Hawks. They won the last, 2.5, 3 quarters of this game by 30 plus points on the road against a decent opponent. That's nothing to sneeze at, even after kind of a slow start. For me, as far as takeaways, again, the most important thing is the importance of the win and the impact on the standings and the races. But on the court, the Hawks had a really lights-out offensive game. This is a comprehensive offensive performance for this team, and it's fair to say this year the offense, and it makes sense when you factor in, no Trae Young for most of the year, Porzingis, all that stuff, a reevaluation of a team, a overhaul of a team. Offense has not exactly been lights out all year long, but in this game, they were tremendous. Had an offensive rating about 130, which is awesome in any context. One of their best offensive games of the season by the numbers, and eye test matches that. Milwaukee is not a great defensive team. They were 24th in the league coming in defensive rating, and that got worse, but that's a credit to the Hawks, who were, even when they were struggling early in this game, they actually were putting up points. It was the defense that kind of flipped things later on, but they shot really well all the way around this game. Basically, they were 44% from three in this one, 20 of 45 from deep, one of their best 6-7 performances of the season from three-point range. They were good inside the arc as well, 54% from the field in the game. They had 33 assists, 11 turnovers, exactly what the Hawks want to play. They want to be balanced. They want to be unselfish. They want to move the ball quickly. All of that was on display here. Speaking of balance, they had 4 guys with at least 18 points or more, 6 guys with double figures, and 9 players had at least 7 points in this game. Pretty much the definition of how a balanced offense is supposed to look. And they were able to score in the half court the entire game. Now, the Hawks have been, I would say reliant is probably a little bit too strong, but they've certainly been buoyed by their ability to run when they force turnovers defensively and fast break and all that stuff. That makes sense for a young athletic team, but the Hawks have had some trouble scoring when things slow down, which means half court against a set defense this year. No such trouble in this game. They had about a 121 offensive rating in the half court, according to Cleaning the Glass. That is an elite factor, and basically the Hawks were able to score whenever, wherever against this Milwaukee team, and that was a nice establishing baseline on this night. Now, on defense, it was totally a roller coaster, I have to say. They ended up at the end of the game with like a relatively average overall production of, on defense by the numbers, I would say. But the Bucks shot almost 70% inside the arc in this game. Part of that's Giannis being Giannis. But the Hawks did fairly well elsewhere overall. They forced 15 turnovers, led to 26 points. That's a Hawks staple this season. Actually rebounded the ball fairly well by their standards. They limited free throw attempts, only 20 allowed in this game. All of those are pretty solid boxes to check. But the big takeaway that I would have from the defense was that it was truly a tale of two halves in a lot of ways. That gets overused because it's a trope, but it also makes sense and it's true in this case. In the first half, the Hawks were down by 5 points at halftime. They allowed 71 points on 62% shooting from Milwaukee from the field in the first half with 11 3-pointers. They had about an offensive rating of like 150 before halftime. It was kind of amazing the Hawks were in the game, given how bad they defended in the first half. But in the second half, their defensive rating was actually less than 90. It was elite after halftime. The Bucks slowed down all the way across the board, including 2 of 20 from 3 for Milwaukee in the second half. And look, the Bucks went cold from 3. That is part of what happened here for sure. In the NBA, it's never just one thing. But to be very clear, defensively on film, after watching the game again, as I always do before recording the podcast, by the numbers, eye test, film, breakdowns, all that wrapped into one, defensively the Hawks were so much better in the second half of this game. It was night and day. And a lot of attention is being paid, and I think rightly so, to the Hawks changing their coverage on Giannis. Early in the game, Giannis was able to kind of get where he wanted to. And I will say this, Giannis was playing at a energy level that he's not really had for a lot of the season, and he's been out for a while, and he looked to be really kind of, putting it in the red, like flying around early in this game. That was part of it. But the Hawks changed their coverage and put Dyson on him. And Dyson, of course, is a guard for the most part, playing the three at the starting lineup sometimes. But one of his strengths is that he is so strong, like a fire hydrant strong, and he's a lot bigger than a lot of guards. And he's able to be that kind of utility player defensively to be able to hold up on Giannis. And it wasn't only him. They were doubling him some for sure. But that change helped to facilitate down the rest of the defense. I thought the rest of the defense was much better as well. Dyson was frankly brilliant on defense in this game. But other guys played well as well. I think Congo had a good game after the first quarter or so. Nikhil was great defensively. I thought McCollum played well defensively by his standards. Ricochet was flying around on the second unit. Mo Gay did his job, etc. So a lot of positives defensively after the slow start. And it wasn't quite the type of defensive effort that the Hawks had in their first 4 games of the winning streak. They were playing against bad teams, quite frankly, at least 3 bad teams, and then like a so-so team who was hurt in Portland. They had a 97 defensive rating in those 4 games. That was not this. In this game, the offense led the way. That's why I wanted to open with that to say, even when the Hawks were not defending, their scoring kept them in the game in the first half. But then what flipped the game was the defense really turning things on, and an impressive overall performance for the defense for the last 2.5 quarters or so, which was massive. So look, I don't want to overstate it. It's a game in March. Milwaukee's not a great basketball team, but this is their best opponent that the Hawks have played in 2 weeks, and they beat them soundly in this spot, even with Giannis playing. And that's a nice step in the right direction. I know if you're listening to the podcast regularly, you will know that I've been a broken record on this for a while. This is the easy stretch of the season for the Hawks on paper, and that does not guarantee anything. But what really is encouraging to me is that the Hawks are taking full advantage, maximizing this stretch, winning 5 games in a row, winning 6 of the last 7. That's what they were supposed to do in some ways, or kind of what they needed to do in some ways. But it's never a given, and the Hawks are now, again, over 500 for the first time in a long time, and going back home from here for 5 more at home, so a chance to really run things up if they can kind of continue playing at this level. Hopefully Kuminga is back and healthy by the next game on Saturday. But in the meantime, a great win on the road for the Hawks and a red-hot basketball team as March continues.
That's all for today's Big 3 in 30 NBA. If you follow football or college sports, the Big 3 in 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NFL and on campus going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 in 30 NFL or the Big 3 in 30 College wherever you're listening or watching right now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 in 30 NBA.